I always loved camping, but after what happened last summer, I don't think I'll ever go again. It was supposed to be a fun trip with my friends, but it turned into a nightmare. We arrived at the campsite in the afternoon and set up our tents near a small lake. The weather was perfect, sunny and warm, and we decided to go for a swim. We had a blast, splashing each other and diving into the water. We didn't notice the dark clouds gathering in the sky until it was too late. Suddenly, a loud thunderclap startled us, and we saw lightning flash across the horizon. We quickly got out of the water and ran to our tents, hoping to stay dry. But the rain was so heavy that it soaked us in seconds. We zipped up our tents and waited for the storm to pass. It didn't. The rain kept pouring, the wind howled, and the thunder roared. We could barely hear each other over the noise. We tried to call for help, but there was no signal. We were trapped. We spent the night shivering and praying, hoping that the storm would end soon. But it didn't. It lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, without any sign of stopping. We ran out of food and water, and we started to lose hope. We wondered if anyone would ever find us, or if we would die there. On the 4th day, the rain finally stopped. We were overjoyed, thinking that we were saved. We unzipped our tents and stepped outside, eager to see the sun. But what we saw made us scream. The lake had flooded, and the water had risen to our ankles. The ground was muddy and slippery, and the trees were broken and bent. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the bodies. There were dozens of them, floating in the water, bloated and pale. They were the other campers, the ones who had been staying at the other side of the lake. They had drowned in the flood, and their corpses had drifted to our side. We were horrified, and we wanted to get away from there as fast as possible. But we had nowhere to go. Our car was submerged, and the road was washed away. We were stuck. We tried to ignore the bodies, and we looked for a way out. We hoped that someone would come to rescue us, or that we would find a boat or a raft. But we found nothing. We were alone. We spent another night in our tents, hoping that the next day would be better. But it wasn't. It was worse. The next morning, we woke up to a horrible smell. It was the smell of rotting flesh. The bodies had started to decompose, and the water was tainted with blood and pus. The flies and maggots were everywhere, and the crows were circling above. We felt sick, and we wanted to vomit. But we had no choice. We had to drink the water, or we would die of thirst. We had to eat the maggots, or we would die of hunger. We had to survive, or we would die. We did what we had to do, and we hated ourselves for it. We drank the water, and we ate the maggots. We survived, but we wished we didn't. We don't know how long we stayed there, or how we got out. We don't remember much, except the pain and the horror. We don't talk about it, ever. We don't want to remember. We are alive, but we are not the same. We are broken, and we can't be fixed. We are haunted, and we can't escape. We always loved camping, but after what happened last summer, we don't think we'll ever go again. I never thought I would regret going on a camping trip with my friends, but that's exactly what happened. We wanted to have an adventure, so we decided to camp in the jungle, far away from civilization. We thought it would be fun, but it was a mistake. We arrived at the jungle in the morning and hiked for hours until we found a clearing to set up our tents. The jungle was beautiful, full of green trees, colorful flowers, and exotic animals. We heard the sounds of birds, monkeys, and insects, and we felt like we were in a different world. We set up our camp and decided to explore the jungle. We followed a trail that led us deeper into the forest, hoping to see some wildlife. We saw some monkeys, parrots, and snakes, and we took pictures of them. We were having a great time, until we realized that we were lost. We had wandered too far from the trail, and we couldn't find our way back. We tried to use our phones, but there was no signal. We tried to use our compass, but it was broken. We tried to use the sun, but it was hidden by the clouds. We were panicking, and we didn't know what to do. We decided to keep walking, hoping to find the trail or the camp. But we only got more lost. The jungle was getting darker, and we could hear strange noises. We felt like we were being watched, and we were scared. We walked for hours, until we saw a light in the distance. We thought it was our camp, and we ran towards it. But it wasn't. It was a fire, and around it, there were people. They were not friendly. They were cannibals. They saw us, and they grabbed us. They tied us up, and they dragged us to their fire. They were chanting, and they were smiling. They were hungry, and they wanted to eat us. We screamed, and we begged. We tried to escape, but we couldn't. We were helpless, and we knew we were going to die. But then, we heard a gunshot. And another. And another. We saw flashes of light, and we heard shouts. We realized that someone had come to rescue us. It was the park rangers, who had been searching for us since we went missing. They had followed our trail, and they had found the cannibals' camp. They had attacked them, and they had saved us. They untied us, and they carried us to their jeep. They drove us away from the jungle, and they took us to the hospital. We were alive, and we were grateful. We thanked them, and we hugged them. We cried, and we laughed. We survived, and we were happy. We never thought we would regret going on a camping trip with our friends, but that's exactly what happened. We wanted to have an adventure, but we had a nightmare. But we also had a miracle, and we had a new life. I always wanted to visit Alaska, the last frontier of America. I heard it was the best state for camping, with its vast wilderness, stunning scenery, and abundant wildlife. I decided to take a trip there with my friend, who lived in Anchorage, which had amazing views of the ocean and the mountains. He said it was warmer and less windy than the other campsites on the Kenai Peninsula. We arrived at the campsite in the afternoon and set up our tents near the beach. The campsite was spacious and clean, with a picnic table, a fire pit, and a toilet. We had access to DirecTV, Wi-Fi, and free showers, $1. We felt like we had everything we needed for a comfortable and relaxing stay. We decided to go for a walk on the beach, hoping to see some wildlife. We saw some sea otters, bald eagles, and harbor seals. We also saw some whale spouts in the distance. We were amazed by the beauty and diversity of nature. We took some pictures and videos, and we posted them on social media. We wanted to share our experience with our friends and family. We returned to our campsite and started a fire. We cooked some hot dogs and marshmallows, and we drank some beer. We talked about our plans for the next day, which included fishing, kayaking, and hiking. We were excited to explore more of Alaska. We went to bed early, looking forward to a new adventure. We woke up to a loud noise. It sounded like a roar, followed by a splash. We got out of our tents and looked around. We saw a huge creature emerging from the water. It had a long neck, a small head, and a pair of flippers. It looked like a dinosaur, or a sea monster. It was a plesiosaur. We couldn't believe our eyes. We thought we were dreaming, or hallucinating. We pinched ourselves, but we felt the pain. We were awake, and we were in danger. The plesiosaur saw us, and it opened its mouth. It had rows of sharp teeth, and it looked hungry. It moved towards us, and it made another roar. We screamed, and we ran. We tried to get to our car, but it was too far. The plesiosaur was faster, and it caught up with us. It grabbed my friend with its jaws, and it dragged him into the water. I heard his bones crunch, and his blood spurt. I saw his lifeless body disappear into the depths. I was terrified, and I cried. I wanted to help him, but I couldn't. I wanted to escape, but I didn't know how. I was alone, and I knew I was going to die. The plesiosaur came back for me, and it lunged at me. I dodged its attack, and I grabbed a stick. I stabbed it in its eye, and it let out a shriek. It was wounded, and it was angry. It swung its tail, and it hit me in the chest. I flew in the air, and I landed on the ground. I felt a sharp pain, and I coughed up blood. I had broken ribs, and I couldn't breathe. I looked at the plesiosaur, and it looked at me. It had a gleam in its eye, and it smiled. It was enjoying this, and it wanted to finish me. It moved closer, and it opened its mouth. It was ready to end my life. But then, I heard another noise. It sounded like a gunshot, followed by a scream. I saw a flash of light, and I saw blood. I realized that someone had shot the plesiosaur, and it had hit its heart. It was dead, and it fell to the ground. It was over. I saw a man running towards me, and he had a rifle in his hand. He was a park ranger, and he had come to rescue me. He had heard our screams, and he had seen our posts. He had followed our location, and he had found our campsite. He had saved my life. He reached me, and he checked my pulse. He said I was alive, but I needed medical attention. He called for backup, and he waited with me. He told me his name, and he asked me mine. He told me I was lucky, and he asked me what happened. He told me he had never seen anything like this, and he asked me if I knew what it was. He told me I had survived a plesiosaur attack, and he asked me if I believed it. I didn't know what to say, or what to think. I was in shock, and I was in pain. I had lost my friend, and I had seen a monster. I had survived, but I wished I didn't. I always wanted to visit Alaska, the last frontier of America. I heard it was the best state for camping, but I found out it was the worst. I decided to take a trip there with my friend, but it turned into a tragedy. I woke up to a loud noise. It sounded like a roar, followed by a splash. I got out of my tent and looked around. I saw a huge creature emerging from the water. It had a long neck, a small head, and a pair of flippers. It looked like a dinosaur, or a sea monster. It was a plesiosaur. I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought I was dreaming, or hallucinating. I pinched myself, but I felt the pain. I was awake, and I was in danger. The plesiosaur saw me, and it opened its mouth. It had rows of sharp teeth, and it looked hungry. It moved towards me, and it made another roar. I screamed, and I ran. I tried to get to my car, but it was too far. The plesiosaur was faster, and it caught up with me. It grabbed my leg with its jaws, and it dragged me into the water. I felt its teeth sink into my flesh, and I felt the blood gush out. I saw its eyes, and I saw its hunger. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't give up. I kicked it with my other leg, and I punched it with my fists. I fought for my life, and I hoped for a miracle. And then I got one. I saw a flash of metal, and I heard a loud bang. I saw a harpoon pierce the plesiosaur's skull, and I saw it go limp. I saw a boat, and I saw a man. He was a fisherman, and he had come to save me. He had seen the plesiosaur, and he had shot it with his harpoon gun. He was a hero. He pulled me out of the water, and he cut the plesiosaur's jaws. He freed my leg, and he wrapped it with a bandage. He said I was alive, but I needed medical attention. He called for help, and he waited with me. He told me his name, and he asked me mine. He told me I was lucky, and he asked me what happened. He told me he had never seen anything like this, and he asked me if I knew what it was. He told me I had survived a plesiosaur attack, and he asked me if I believed it. I didn't know what to say, or what to think. I was in shock, and I was in pain. I had lost my friend, and I had seen a monster. I had survived, but I wished I didn't. I always wanted to visit Alaska, the last frontier of America. I heard it was the best state for camping, but I found out it was the worst. I decided to take a trip there with my friend, but it turned into a tragedy. But I also had a miracle, and I had a second chance.